Thank you very much, everyone, for joining this fantastic webinar on the digitalization and solar in emerging markets. We are delighted to be accompanied by these extraordinary experts in the renewable energy landscape. Today with us is Tony Familia, the VP Sales for AMMP Technologies, Eveline Jansen, the Outreach and Impact Manager of GOGLA, Pascal Wehrli, the Senior Manager and the Smart Energy Solutions of Envision Digital Europe, Jansen, the Head of Sales and Business Development of SMA, and Douglas Miller from the Energy Web Foundation. So, as you may be well aware, digital and solar is the key pillar of the global energy transition in all sectors of the economy and the society. Our experts will present examples of digital technologies coupled with solutions in the context of emerging markets. So in this webinar, you will have the chance to learn about the importance of digital solar to enable access to energy in new and emerging markets outside of Europe, and also of digital solar solutions that are more adequate for countries which actually have a more stable power grids. So particularly, you will get to know examples of off-grid digital technologies and also business models such as solar-based microgrids and pay-as-you-go for solar, which enable access to energy in off-grid contexts. And also you will learn about on-grid technologies and business models that are interesting for new and emerging solar markets with more stable power grids, such as smart data analytics or digital asset management for utility scale plants. So, first of all, welcome all of you. And our first speaker will be Tony Familia, the VP Sales of AMMP Technologies. So please, Tony, if you would like to start with the presentation.
Yeah, happy to. Hello, everybody from sunny Amsterdam, or at least I hope it gets sunny by summertime. It's been raining actually continuously. Thank you to Solar Power Europe for setting this up. So as was introduced, AMP is not a company that designs and installs any of these solar energy systems. Rather, we have a software solution that helps energy developers manage their systems which are already deployed. So I only have 8 or 10 minutes to kind of go through a case study, but of course you're welcome to reach out to us later, and if you would like the full case study, you're welcome to also download it off of our website for free. So AMP is a real-time operational intelligence software that aims at reducing the cost and streamlining the management of off-grid energy assets. As of today, we have about 500 plus energy systems. This is a mixture of CNI systems and mini grids. And we did an estimate that currently where the energy systems on the mini grid side, which are being monitored on the AMP platform, is approximately representing about 30,000 individuals. Mostly, you can see we're kind of around the globe, but it's mostly in sub-Saharan Africa that the systems are being deployed. I think these are the most significant emerging markets for us. Just so you have a picture of who's speaking and also my contact information, you'll get this slide deck later. And welcome to reach out and we can discuss. I probably don't need to tell you that over 1 billion people globally still don't have access to electricity. And I probably also don't need to tell you that most of them live in Africa. But you might not realize that this problem is already being solved in a fairly significant way. And it's being solved by energy developers deploying mini grids that are not attached to the national grid of their country in any way, and is being run and operated largely in the private sector by these energy developers. So by 2030, almost 500 million people globally will be powered by mini grids. This is a pretty impressive number. However, running these mini grids can be very challenging. And owners and operators are often in the dark about what's actually happening in these remote sites. In a study that came out recently, out of mini grids installed in the last 10 years, 65%, basically 2/3 of those systems, are either not operational or have an unknown status. So why is this? This is Mohammed. He's on his way out to service one of the local mini grids that he's responsible for in Tanzania. Oftentimes these mini grids are in remote locations. Physical access is challenging, and that's why having remote access or remote digital access is critical. But here we get into another problem as well, which we'll illustrate a little bit in some slides in the case study. Every vendor and component manufacturer typically has their own proprietary bit of software. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's adequate, sometimes it's not. However, they're all different, and getting an overall view of the status of an energy system and all of its components spread across various manufacturers is oftentimes very challenging as well. In the next few minutes, I want to just do an overview of one of the projects that we're very happy to be a part of that happened in Nigeria. So this case study was how IoT enables operational excellence for off-grid systems at scale. The location of this case study was the Sabongari market, which is located in Nigeria. It's the second largest industrial center in Nigeria. It's located in the north of Nigeria, and it represents 12,000 shops. So this is a huge commercial center in Nigeria, in the commercial scene. And you can see it's very, very far up in the north in Nigeria. This is what it looks like. It was not connected to the national grid whatsoever. It was completely powered by fossil fuel diesel generators. So generating a tremendous amount of pollution, noise pollution as well, but burning all that diesel fuel to power all these shops was a significant negative impact on the environment. The company who actually designed the energy system to deploy and to manage is RenSource. Maybe it's a company that you're familiar with. It's one of our customers that we serve in Nigeria and some of the surrounding areas. And they understood a lot of the limitations because they were going to be using a lot of different vendors and components manufactured by different hardware manufacturers. And they already knew a lot of the challenges which I previously mentioned. So they knew that AMP or somebody like AMP needed to provide for them a digital solution to make sure that their mini grids were functioning properly, the uptime was as high as possible, and that if there was an issue, it could be resolved very quickly. Not necessarily by somebody locally, but somebody who at the operations center could understand what the issue was. So obviously here, it is a very large scale mini grid, and managing such a high number of systems was going to be a challenge. I won't belabor this slide, but the point of it is that operationally it was extremely challenging, not just the number of smart meters and the number of mini grids, but all of the other aspects that need to be taken into account to make sure that the system delivered and deployed met the expectations of the customers, and that it wasn't going to become one of these systems like previously we showed, which was going to be installed and then they just walk away and hopefully things work. That was not the goal of this. So RenSource did all the system design. We were part of that. We do a decent amount of consulting as well to make sure that not just that it can communicate digitally with the cloud and the AMP platform, but also that it makes sense. A number of the co-founders have extensive experience in systems design also, and previously worked in emerging markets in Africa. Just an example, some of the dashboards that you would see from the various vendors of the hardware that could be used in your energy systems. And some of them are very good, and some of them are not as good. It depends on how focused they are on this aspect of their business model. What we did for them is we take all of these vendors and we put them all in one place. So you have all of this data, and you have a unified system for health status and also managing the alerting of the system. I don't think this is probably as important to go over right here, but this is some of the challenges that energy developers have and how AMP is trying to help them scale their operations and deliver the type of customer experience that they want to give, whether we're talking about the energy access segment or the energy transition segment, which is the Sabongari market is energy transition. These people already were having energy access, but they were going from exclusively relying on diesel generators to exclusively relying on the solar system. Sometimes there's a hybrid solution, as you know. It's not always one size fits all. Just a few examples of how it helped their operations team. Just a simple dashboard using, a red, yellow, green light traffic-based system. So that on the left-hand side, you could see the various hubs or names of the systems deployed. And at a glance, you have a very good idea if the system is operating or if there could be a potential problem that you need to identify. I'll also say I don't need to tell you that a lot of these components can be very sensitive, especially batteries, maintaining the correct state of charge, whether or not it's a lead battery or a lithium battery. You can have the way you manage the battery has a huge impact on the life expectancy of that component, which can have a real impact subsequently on your bottom line. That's something that we also try to minimize the cost for our operators. Being able to drill down into the system and getting more detailed analysis is especially important for the technicians in the operations center so that they can quickly and easily educate the field technicians to address any possible issues. So I think the 8 to 10 minutes is pretty well done, getting the right information, whether or not you're pushing emails or Slack notifications out to your field team to make sure that they're aware of exactly what's going on with the system, so that they understand what needs to be done to address either a system outage or something that, if left unanswered, could potentially create a system outage. This is obviously my favorite slide in the whole presentation, the before and after of Sabongari market. We're very privileged to be able to work and support these energy developers because they're the ones that are actually doing the magic. They're the ones that are designing and installing these systems that not only are impacting the lives of the end users, but they're impacting the pollution and our environment. And it's something that we're very proud to be part of and to support. Many of you know Prince. He's the head of the engineering operations for RenSource, and they've been a pleasure to work with as well as they've rolled out their system and also subsequent systems. They're doing, I think, a lot of good in their area. So instead of having, the first step is deploying the mini grids, and the second step is making sure the mini grids continue to operate at an optimal level. And in order to do that, we we try to support all of our customers and anyone who has these types of systems so that they can have easy access to their data and deliver on their promises to make sure that the energy systems that are in operation are performing exactly the way that they should. So thank you everybody for your time, and we invite you to join our journey and look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Thank you very much, Tony. That was a delightful presentation. And our next speaker will be Eveline Jansen from GOGLA. Eveline, please.
All right, thanks so much. Hi, everyone. So I'm Eveline, the Outreach and Impact Manager at GOGLA. I'll be sharing a little bit about the background of GOGLA, of course, as an organization. Focus a little bit on a particular business model in the off-grid solar sector, the PAYGO model, used by a large share of our members. One of which is BBOX, of which there is a case study in the Digitalisation in Solar and Storage report from Solar Power Europe. So GOGLA is a global not-for-profit industry association representing companies and organizations that are active in the off-grid solar sector. So we have around 170 members. We have companies and distributors, manufacturers that are members, but also stakeholders that are active in the broader sector, so financiers or test labs or similar. So we are there to support the growth of the market and to support our members to grow their business, so to say. So as an industry association, we do this through supplying resources, convening and networking, as well as advocacy. It's kind of what the staple of every association's business. So we focus our advocacy efforts, for example, on both the international and the local policy arena, with the goal of building and enabling, enabling policy and investment environments. We also establish industry standards and guidelines, and we are, if I may say so, a unique source of market data and sector impacts. So the ultimate goal, of course, that we're all working towards is this universal energy access by 2030, which is now over 10 years away. So over here on the right side of the slide, you see kind of like the products that GOGLA industry members are selling. And I think it's good to kind of highlight that with off-grid, we mean kind of off-grid standalone systems, but we don't mean mini grids. So we really focus on lanterns, and we focus on, those are the small lanterns. We focus on solar home systems, productive use appliances, and solar street lighting. I think one thing to highlight here is, for example, that since we started tracking in mid-2010, our sector has provided improved energy access to over 280 million people. So digitalization kind of plays a key role in the sector. And one of the most prominent emerging business models is the pay-as-you-go business models, highlighted in the Solar Power Europe report, with a case study of BBOX, and BBOX is one of our members. So the pay-as-you-go model is kind of a business model where customers can pay for the system in small installments, so often via mobile money, but can also be done via cash. And this, what this means is that people in a low-income households have the opportunity to own systems that otherwise they wouldn't be able to possess. So, and these systems often mean kind of like an improvement in quality of life, which I think is quite important. So to enable the business model, the companies will have to install a software that is part as part of the system that enables those payments. So in addition to enabling the payments, they also enable remote controlling of the asset. So that means that, for example, when there's a customer that's defaulting, they can shut off the system and they can turn it back on again once payments are being made again. And then, in addition, it also allows for monitoring the status of the product. So, for example, being able to see if the battery is still okay, if there is something off in the amount of power that's generated that might signal that, for example, the customer needs to clean their panel. I think this is similar to also, mini grids and larger systems. You have the same concept, but you also have it in these off-grid environments. Then, in addition, it of course provides the company with a lot of usage data, which is also a lot of valuable customer behavior information. I think one interesting aspect is that by making all these continuous small payments, those payments are being recorded, and these people that were formerly not financially on the map, they now all of a sudden have a credit history. So they can, this is kind of like a base to showcase that they are reliable in terms of their payments. And this in turn can lead to financial inclusion, making them more eligible for formal financial service providers. So often in our sector, a parallel is made with how Africa skipped, phone landlines and went straight to mobile phones. And I think ultimately we could envision here households with, independent and decentralized energy access, also in the developing countries. And they would be leapfrogging kind of like the old grid technology, so to speak. And in the case of bbox, and again, I of course encourage everyone to read the case study. They really have taken this digitalization effort to kind of like a new level. So they position their solution as a next generation utility, where they're as is their slogan, kind of like they bring an on-grid experience in off-grid surroundings. And then I think what's quite interesting to also realize is that, well, of course, all the software and all the data brings a lot of benefits that I mentioned for the clients, but it also really works well for themselves in that they can showcase like a substantial amount of data to attract investors to their cause, right? So you have a substantial amount of data that is really key to offer insights and back claims, where you can really show your default rate, your financial performance, looking at actual risk that you're having. So it kind of like it's beneficial for both sides. So there's of course beyond bbox, there's many more companies doing PayGo. So while the off-grid solar sector is still you can still consider it a young sector. I think we're now kind of at a 10-year mark, but it's still developing rapidly and it's having quite an impact. So since 2010, all systems sold have provided nearly access to energy to that, to that 280 million people number that I showed before. It's really kind of one of the key roles of GOGLA to provide such market intelligence, which we do by conducting like primary research and doing like sales data collection every half year. And of course, we've also started tracking this PayGo sales in the market, as well as the market value, since the beginning of 2018. So it's, that's also how the business model is also even newer or even more nascent. In our latest collection round, we captured sales between January and June of 2019. And that showed that not only it was actually like a record half year where there were, I think, a little over 4 million sales in total. Also for the first time at that point, we broke through the number of 1 million systems that were being sold on a PayGo basis, which is in 6 months only. So the market value development that's shown at the bottom left here is shown for the past 3 collection rounds. So they're each covering 6 months, and you really see like a very steady growth. And then on the right of the slide, I added kind of like a graph showing where the main market is, and it's quite straightforward. The main market is Africa. and I can even say that it's mainly in East Africa. West Africa is really developing as a solid second market, but one of the reasons I think I can say that PEGO is working so well in East Africa is it's really because it's quite a prospering mobile money market, money market environment. So, for example, in Southern Africa or South Asia, that's much less prevalent. So the PEGO business model is also much less prominent. So there are quite, of course, some, beyond the PEGO model, there's quite some other examples of digitalization in our sector that we haven't touched on in the report, but that I still kind of wanted to highlight and kind of keen to showcase. Because I think if you're not involved in the sector, it's kind of, it's easy to underestimate the level of, of software and of technology and, general digitalization that nowadays really underlies our sector and really, really facilitates a significant impact on the lives of people that previously would not have had access to energy or not have had access to reliable energy. So just a few examples to highlight. There is Angaza and Solaris. Those are two companies that are in the business of providing a PEGO software platform for distributors. So they have kind of like this ready platform that can be customized according to distributors' needs, and then it combines also, it can include a CRM and distribution operations management and like a sales agent tool. And then, of course, it also provides all the insights from all the data that it gathered. Then there's a firm called BFA Global. It's a firm specializing in data and technology and finance, and they have been working on quite some innovative pilot projects where where they're using artificial intelligence, and you can kind of think of pilots where AI is used to kind of like plow through large amounts of data to improve operational processes, obviously. You can, and with that you can predict when customers are at risk to default. So you can kind of see that, you can spot trends in payment behavior. You can also kind of identify motives or seasonal patterns in repayment behavior. So you can see maybe like when crops come in and people have more to spend, or when kids go to school and they don't have that much money to spend because they need to pay school fees. And you can kind of anticipate on that as a company. Some other examples are projects where they looked at the text-to-speech function to read out like a contract to illiterate customers. They have been doing stuff with like a geospatial visualization for like a sales prediction tool to inform, where can you expand, in which region can you go as a company. They've also had a tool for kind of like predicting the optimal routes for sales agents, which is also quite interesting. So yeah, there's many like small operational improvements ongoing and possible there, if you just use data and AI. Another example is Zonville Energy, which is a small Zimbabwean distributor, and they have actually set up an innovative way to reduce their own operational costs by having an Uber-like app for freelance technicians in order to keep after-sales costs down. And then I think I also wanted to share a little bit, I want to highlight Solshare in Bangladesh, who have set up an IoT energy trading platform where people can basically trade the excess energy that they get from their solar home systems with other people. And it's not even between solar home system customers, but also, with households that don't own a solar home system. And so in my eyes, these are all really quite exciting examples, really showing the opportunities and innovations that digitalization can bring in the off-grid solar sector. So I think I will leave it at that. Happy to answer any questions that might have come up a bit later during Q&A.
Thank you very much, Eveline. That was fantastic. And now our next speaker will be Pascal Wehrli. And we'll go into a closer look into actually on-grid applications. So we are moving from off-grid to on-grid. Thank you very much, Pascal.
All right, thank you. Yes, indeed. What I will be presenting is representative of connected solution on grid, slightly larger scale, solar power plants, solar assets. My name is Pascal Wehrli, and I'm a smart energy solution manager at Envision Digital. For those who may not have heard about Envision, a few quick facts. Envision started as a wind turbine manufacturer and is now within the top 5 global suppliers. A few years after company launch, Envision also started a digital arm developing software solution, energy management solution for wind and solar assets, now also expanding into electric vehicle and smart buildings. As part of those solutions, Envision deployed an innovative solar performance and analytics software, and I will show you a few examples of those deployments in this presentation. Right. I'm going to present a couple use cases on the deployment of those smart analytics solutions, specifically in the Southeast Asia region in Vietnam and Malaysia. This first use case describes the situation of a solar developer owner in Vietnam, a customer of ours. So Vietnam is a fast-growing market with little prior experience and solar domain knowledge. And you have asset developer, owners, operators who are being asked to cope with a fast-growing fleet with little prior experience. And even when they can tap into existing domain experience from more mature markets, such as Europe or North America, they may realize that the Southeast Asia region has unique challenges, unique climate. For example, heavy rains and high humidity increase exposure to PID, or the sensitivity to ground faults in the case of damaged cables. You also have other dynamics in terms of O&M cost. The labor rate is cheaper, so that all allows for different strategies around O&M schedule compared with European best practices. You also see curtailment and grid stability as a high concern for this region. Now come digital solutions. They are able to provide elaborate guidance, taking a systems level and a cost-benefit analysis approach. We deployed our Insight software for this customer, and what it offers is a detailed and accurate description of the performance issues of the sites or at the fleet level. Provides detail on the performance of all major PV systems, be it soiling or inverter issues, or also provide automatic performance alerts and corrective action recommendations. So with this tool on hand, our customer is able to quickly understand which are the largest issues for each site, how they evolve, how they are relevant for every day, every week. Look at trends. They learn from automated recommendations for maintenance planning. They are able to enter their own maintenance cost and see how they can devise an optimized maintenance and performance optimization plan. So you have crews who now quickly learn about the particularities of each site. I want to emphasize that this is not taking the decision making away from the operator and performance manager, but rather provides them with insights and intelligence so they can make the best decisions. On this particular graph, which represents one plant in Vietnam, You see a fairly high thermal loss to the order of 5.5%. This is not the most actionable item, but it can be useful to know your sensitivity to thermal loss and try to procure advantageous PV modules. But what is more interesting to see is that almost 2% of the energy is lost to curtailment. Curtailment is a growing challenge for regions with a less stable grid that also see a sudden growth of renewable solar penetration. We will see more about this particular topic on the next slide. So this is a second use case now in Malaysia, a mid-size utility scale power plant in Malaysia, about 10 megawatt. It is suffering from quite heavy curtailment. You see on the top graph 4 days with the curtailment amount in yellow, and the bottom graph shows a 1-year view. So what you see is a near daily curtailment that affects about 6 to 8% of annual production. So now you have, well, our customer, the solar asset owner, who is facing this situation. What are his options? The first one, which may not be a terrible one, which is a sometimes acceptable option, is to continue over design his solar site and accept the loss and absorb it in his business model. The second option, people are tempted to say, of course, this is a good case for energy storage. And we helped this customer to do a sizing optimization study for a potential storage. The results were mixed. A solar storage system would be at the border of financial viability. So now come the third solution, which is to deploy smarter tools and other digital solutions to help both the asset owner gain awareness of his issue, of how much he loses to curtailment, how critical it is to address it, and also to provide the grid operator with better and more advanced digital tools. So that includes power forecasting, which the burden usually falls on the energy producer to forecast its production and provide numbers 4 hours ahead, 1 day ahead to the grid operator. And the grid operator uses this information and can in turn also use other digital solutions that include a more efficient bidding platform for balancing power, or a platform for demand response, or other tools that can help manage the balance of the grid. So those were just 2 use cases, 2 examples of how smart performance optimization software can help new entrants in solar and emerging markets that are opening up to renewables, and pave the road for a much larger scale deployment of solar in these regions. We wish good luck to all new solar entrants in emerging markets, and hope that digital tools will continue to help them understand their assets and allow to grow fast and still manage and optimize their operations. Thank you for this. I will give the microphone back.
Thank you very much, Pascal. Now, please welcome Jansen to the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for having me in this great webinar. I hope you can hear me properly.
Yeah, we can hear you well.
Okay, very good. So I mean, we are talking about digitalization in the solar environment, and so far we haven't spoken about what do we mean by digitalization. And I mean, I would be happy to give you a clear definition about this term, but it is more, let's say, a broad field which covers several aspects. First of all, we need to speak about transparency and monitoring. Secondly, we need to talk about control and load management, as well as interconnectivity between power production systems and consumers. We need also to talk about like different business models which may evolve, like peer-to-peer trading, which may incorporate some sort of blockchain mechanism. And we may also talk about energy market integration and business models which evolve from the capacity market. So all these terms come into the broader aspect of digitalization. Okay. Oh, sorry. Just okay. So if you're in the solar field, you probably know the company SMA. Maybe just to summarize a couple of numbers and facts and figures. So our company is in the business since 1981, so with over 80 gigawatt of installed inverter power, both on-grid and off-grid, whereas the majority, of course, is within the on-grid field, as this is just the much bigger market. So we also engaged in the battery storage market, which is an integral part if we talk about energy transition and bidirectional flux of energy. So in that field, we also deployed over 1 gigawatt of inverter power. And honestly speaking, due to this rapid growing market, we added almost another gigawatt in the past year with a very fast growing trend. So it's a 3,000 employee company present in 18 countries around the globe. And also with regards to monitoring and O&M portfolio, we invested a lot to also gain insights from long-term experience of plant behavior. And last but not least, and maybe the most important fact for this webinar in terms of digitalization, is also our monitoring solution. So where we have over 400,000 PV plants, roughly 21 gigawatt, in over 190 countries monitored over our SMA Sunny portal. And of course, the question now is, if you talk about digitalization, okay, this data certainly provides a value, but how to monetize this value? Yeah, especially if we are just more an equipment or solution vendor, and not just like a software company who sells software-based products. Even though we also have like a spin-off, which is called Coneva, based in Munich, and they are exactly basing their business model on data-driven value-adding services for PV and renewables in a broader term, with a white label solution for either industries or municipalities. So, and you see from the picture here on the right-hand side, it's like a modular puzzle. So in the past, we just had, you know, solar industry, solar energy within some sort of a feed-in tariff scheme. And the business case typically could be calculated on a beer coaster. Now, when we talk about interconnectivity, sector coupling, storage integration, e-mobility, heat pumps and capacity market, it is quite a complex calculation and business model behind. So it makes the decision for investors and also off-takers much more difficult to say, okay, I go for this because it is not so easy to understand what will be the long-term benefit. I'm coming to a very specific example in Nicaragua in a moment, but I just want to highlight on the concept beforehand. So you see on the right-hand side, still the sun is the middle and centric part of it, but we added a battery storage, we added e-mobility, we added the loads, we added the monitoring, and last but not least also the grid, and in some parts of this world, genset backup power. Yeah. So, and needless to say that we also try to partner with companies in all of those industries, because I think the energy landscape in today's world has been become so complex that it cannot be managed by one company alone. So to give you a feeling, we entered into a partnership, for example, with TenneT, which is one of the largest German transmission grid operators, already back in 2016, to derive a mechanism to really have a predictable algorithm in terms of, okay, how much solar power will there be in the German grid, not just tomorrow, but in 2 days, in 3 days, next week, because I think in some of the countries, and certainly Germany, but also other European countries, and also starting now in Northern America, solar has become a system critical size. So we can't just carry all of our kilowatt hours into the grid and get remuneration scheme for it, but we need to take over more responsibility. And I would like to show you how digitalization can help in achieving this. So this is how a typical commercial system in that regard, a supermarket, will look like in the future. So we will have some sort of a data management system. Yeah, our company has the so-called NXOS platform. There is a PV system incorporated, because PV is even nowadays the cheapest energy source one can get. Yeah, not necessarily only just in the sunny countries around the globe, but also in not so much sunny countries like, for example, Germany. All the major PPAs are generating power of 5 euro cents per kilowatt hour. A battery system is mandatory in order to compensate for fluctuations, also to outbalance the capacity demand. In the future, and not just in Europe, but also in America, in APEC, it's starting very massive deployment of electrical vehicles, who also participate in this overall energy landscape. Speaking about special consumers, like, for example, supermarkets, we need to talk about cooling systems and integration of refrigerators. For example, the Sunbelt areas, we also have about air conditioning integration. And last but not least, these all can just be achieved when we have a proper monitoring and control system in place. So, and despite the physical aspects of having secure and reliable power and grid and system stability, we also need to talk about the financial aspects and to see how digitalization can help on this. So, and just to give you a rough assessment or estimation. So our analysis shows that just from energy monitoring and transparency on energy demands, savings up to 15% can be achieved by just, manually control loads in a more efficient manner. Obviously, photovoltaic systems, as I said, provide the cheapest source for electricity. An automatic and AI-based load management system can save up to 40% in terms of peak load shaving, increased self-consumption, and arbitrage modeling. Obviously, it depends on the power tariffs in the specific countries. And if you go even one step further in providing energy services, up to 50% savings might be possible. And as an outlook for the future, participation in the capacity market might lead to additional cash flow streams, creating an even more positive business model for the operator. So having said that, I want to give you a specific example from a beer brewery in Nicaragua, because the challenge we had there, or let's say our partner EPC was facing, is that no feed into the grid is allowed in that particular scheme. So obviously this is something what we need to account for from a regulatory perspective. Nevertheless, due to our monitoring platform, NXOS, and the so-called SMA data manager, we can ensure for this zero export functionality by just measuring the power flux on each particular phase, measuring the power factor, and making sure that via a fast and reliable Modbus communication towards the inverter, the PV power is adopted to the specific needs. So in the past, PV systems were designed in a way to see, okay, how big is your roof? I try to maximize the PV power. But nowadays it's more, you know, an consumption adopted sizing of the PV power, especially in countries where grid feedback is not allowed. And this was here the case. So making long story short, the overall installation was roughly 1.2 megawatt peak. Yeah, and this alone helps saving the consumer, in that case the beer brewery, to save significant cost on their electricity bill. Yeah, and by making sure that no power is fed back into the grid, also the grid regulator did not have any objections to have the plant connected to his network. And moving forward, and that was also one positive outcome of the discussions we had in Nicaragua, is that, for example, also this company has a planning of providing electrical vehicle charging stations for both employees but also customers in the near future. So this will add another piece of the puzzle to the overall landscape I was showing in the slide before. So yeah, I think I'm running out of time, but I think we also will have a Q&A session at the end. So yeah, thanks for your attendance.
Thank you very much, Jens. And now our next speaker will be Douglas Miller from the Energy Web Foundation. Please, Douglas.
Great. Well, hello, everybody. Thanks so much for having me today, and hello from Washington, D.C. Today, I realize we're, I guess, running out of time overall, so I'll try to keep my presentation brief. But the goal for my presentation is to share how Energy Web Foundation is, among various things, working to help modernize corporate renewable energy procurement, not just in the legacy markets of Europe and North America, but also and more importantly, in a lot of ways, in emerging markets, with the use of decentralized technologies. And Lorraine, I might need help with the proceeding. Thank you. So in terms of the problem that Energy Web Foundation is focused on, we see a need for new digital tools to support the energy transition that's underway. And so Energy Web Foundation is essentially making it easier to make the transition from large, central, largely fossil fuel-based production resources with relatively fixed demand on the consumption side to a reality that we're all working toward, where we have many more devices, everything from solar panels to electric vehicles to batteries and so on, where this new world we're working toward is inherently more complex, where we know the software that we are making use of to manage our grids, however big or small they may be, are fast going to become both insufficient and also aren't positioned to help customers make the most of all of these different devices that they've invested in. So about 3 years ago, we launched the Energy Web Foundation, which is a global clean energy technology focused nonprofit headquartered in Switzerland with a team distributed across Europe and North America, where our mission is to accelerate the use of decentralized and digital technologies in the energy sector with the goal to help promote decarbonization. So in terms of what we've done over the past 3 years, we've assembled the largest community of utilities, energy companies, grid operators, and startups and financial organizations focused on applying blockchain and other decentralized technologies to the clean energy sector. I think more interestingly, in a lot of ways, we've also helped launch the world's first public open source licensed technology for clean energy solutions, where earlier this year, about 6 months ago, we launched the Energy Web chain, which is the first open and public clean energy blockchain. And we're also building other components where I realize there's a lot going on this slide, and we don't have time to walk through it in detail. But essentially, we're building a robust technology stack to help make it possible to do everything from make it easier to procure renewable energy in a trusted way, to actually manage grids to make the most of our distributed energy resources. I think we've heard a lot of questions over the past few years about why blockchain, why decentralized technologies. In short, we see blockchain being especially useful for enabling the self-registration of devices, making it easier to essentially know that a given device, however big or small it may be, what it's going to do, and then building solutions to actually document when those devices do A or B or C in a particular situation, that everybody's paid properly. And so I think the question that we are pushing is not about why blockchain, but where blockchain as part of a technology stack. And just for everybody's knowledge, because the question about energy use around blockchain comes up so frequently, it should be noted that what matters here is governance, and that the Energy Web chain is governed in a very different way compared to, say, Bitcoin or Ethereum, where rather than it being a free-for-all where anybody can, in blockchain speak, essentially a free-for-all where everybody to sign a block first to add it to the blockchain. In the Energy Web chain, it's a round robin of known regulated energy sector companies who take turns in signing blocks. And so our system is governed in a transparent and, we think, a way aligned with the regulation. So when we got started as an organization, we looked at what are the biggest opportunities to bring this new technology to solve problems in the energy sector, and we identified roughly 100 use cases, where we then whittled it down to a short list of about a dozen. But since then, we've focused on just actually 2. Next slide. Where those 2 in particular include making it easier to know what the source of a particular unit of energy is, so increasing the traceability of renewable energy production, as well as flexibility on the consumption side, and then the other area being making it easier to make the most of distributed energy resources and promote grid flexibility. So given the limited time today, I will focus purely on traceability in our work around what's called Energy Web Origin. So in brief, Energy Web Origin includes a combination of making use of legacy IT technology and infrastructure, along with the new Energy Web chain and the Energy Web Origin toolkit, to essentially make it easier to keep track of what a given renewable energy production device is doing, make it easier to make transactions associated with the production from those devices, and more importantly, make it easier for buyers to actually support new projects. Where in the new digital marketplaces that we're helping build, which I'll provide some details on in a minute, we are essentially, it's a combination of both things that happen on chain and off chain. In terms of the different business scenarios we're focused on supporting, we are looking at 4 main buckets. So first is supporting and growing renewable energy markets. So essentially helping promote a new reality where it's really easy for anybody, whether you're a large corporation or a small business or household, to find what renewable energy projects are already available or which future ones you can support, and allow for buyers to actually make this happen on their own without needing third-party support. We're also looking to unlock demand from electric vehicles and wanting to establish electric vehicles as the next great buyer class in renewable energy markets, essentially linking EV charges with purchases of certificates, preferably from new projects. And we're looking at some other markets too in terms of things like biofuels. Next slide, please. So in terms of let me go back. Sorry, everybody, the slides are advancing in a weird way on my end. Can we go back 2 slides, please? So we're excited about the role of blockchain to support new solutions, where our vision for renewable energy markets is not just to solve existing pain points for large corporations such as the members of RE100 and make it easier for them to meet their goals, especially in emerging markets, but make it possible for anybody to participate. And in terms of our focus, right now we are working with a number of our members in various renewable energy markets, but most especially in IREC markets, where our goal is to unlock digital platforms where the ability of a given buyer to find options to meet their needs in that given country, where the user experience is more like booking a hotel or a flight, where you can see what's available, both existing and future projects, and actually indicate your demand for that and make the transaction moving forward. And so right now we have projects already launched in Thailand, and we expect ones and we've already gotten started on ones in Turkey and Central America, and likely soon in Brazil. Next slide. I don't know why it's not working. So two quick examples to close out my presentation for today. So first, we are working to, as I said, support the development of new marketplace platforms aligned with existing standards like the IREC standard. And in this first case, we are working in Thailand to help the large energy company PTT build a new blockchain-based renewable energy procurement platform that's aligned with the IREC standard. So essentially, we are working both with IREC standard and PTT to make it easier for anybody to actually, whether you're a renewable energy product owner, make it easier for you to post your available IREC supply, whether existing or future, and allow buyers to indicate their demand from these projects to make those transactions directly, where all transactions ultimately synchronize with the IREC standard and associated tracking systems. In terms of what we're building, there are components around making it easier to create digital identities associated with a given renewable energy buyer or seller, in terms of the actual devices themselves, and then solutions to make it easier for, I guess most especially in emerging markets, for smaller production sources, so think rooftop solar, to allow for the aggregation of those for sale to corporate buyers. Next slide. So in terms of our progress to date, the platform goes live later in the early summer of this year. And in terms of what we've done so far, we've put together some initial pilots where essentially we've showcased the ability to post your available IREC supply in an instantaneous way and a transparent way, and allowing for sellers to post their available supply on the market at a given price. And then on the other side of the market, allow for buyers to search based on their either narrow or specific, narrow and specific or more general demands that they can then find available supply that meets their requirements. And then at the end of the process, actually have a full transparent history of a particular product, especially being able to say that you supported a new renewable energy project. Very briefly, in terms of our work around electric vehicles, we're looking to make it possible for any electric vehicle, whether it's an electric bus or an individual vehicle, to participate in renewable energy markets, where we can start to achieve a reality where any EV instantaneously purchases at certain time frames energy attribute certificates based on its consumption. We're excited about this opportunity because EVs represent several-fold larger demand than the largest corporates today. And so we think if we fail to actually capture this demand from EVs, we're going to be missing out on a huge opportunity to create demand for more renewable energy projects. And so in terms of thinking about it, developing nations, we see a big opportunity, especially around electric buses in the near term, to leverage the demand from that to create new projects. And this is something we're looking at in places like Thailand and some of these other projects I mentioned, where we're looking at IREC markets. We put together a simple pilot about a year ago where we looked at what's called the low carbon fuel standard in California. And we envisioned similar regulation elsewhere, where this is an example of a solution that's slightly different from the renewable energy procurement, but it shows how we can document when a given electric vehicle charges up, compare that to the existing electric grid mix at that particular moment in time, and then calculate a carbon credit based on regulatory standards to issue accurate carbon credits based on electric vehicles and their adoption in a given market. So with that, thank you. It's a lot to get through. Sorry for it being a little bit rushed, but I realize we're over time today. And feel free to contact me with any questions. We are actively looking for corporate buyers to participate in the technology development in different IREC markets, and also looking for companies to participate in posting their actual new projects in some of these different markets on this platform. But with that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Douglas. And also thank you very much, Tony, Eveline, Pascal, and Jens. Now we will start with the turn of the Q&A. And actually, we have our first question for Tony Familia. So the first question is, so AMMP also includes battery management software capabilities. And there's a follow-up, and is the system at Savongari completely off-grid? And if so, why?
Yep, thank you for the question. Those are both good questions. The short answer is yes and yes. So one of the advantages of the AMMP solution is that it is vendor agnostic, and majority of the systems, almost all the systems, have batteries attached to them, and being able to forecast and manage their usage, their health state, their temperature, their state of charge is an essential part of what AMMP offers for this management. As to being off-grid, I don't know why that was. It's just the way that the system was designed. It isn't connected to the grid. The Savongari market, even though it is the second largest commercial center in Nigeria, was and remains off of the national grid. So what we see a lot in these emerging markets is that a lot of our customers and a lot of the energy systems on the AMP platform are actually on the grid or under the grid or grid edge, whatever nomenclature you use. But the reason that the energy developers are having such traction in the market, especially the energy transition segment of the market, is because these grids are not reliable. So instead of firing up your diesel generator when the grid goes off, you just switch over to your renewable PV system. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you very much, Tony. Now the next question is for Pascal Wehrli. So Pascal, what is the scene? How is the scene look like at the moment for second life EV batteries? And as a follow-up, has Envision deployed any second life EV batteries for stationary storage applications?
Interesting questions. I would say that the secondary EV battery market is in exploration mode. There are opportunities. Of course, it has its own challenges on how to monitor the health of individual batteries. Are they all healthy? What is the life of each individual ones? So a bit higher in maintenance, but we are exploring opportunities, and so is the market. I would say that overall it is a promising market which will need certain framework to optimize maintenance, have a good grip on the health of each of those batteries. But yes, it is very much on our radar and exploration phase.
Perfect, thank you very much. And there's another question for you, Pascal. So how is the cost-benefit analysis look like for battery storage solutions to overcome curtailment issues? It would be great if you had some figures in mind.
Yeah, so good question. In the particular case I presented, the cost-benefit analysis used the model was quite simple for that particular case. That plant had a flat energy rate, and that's what we used. Of course, a varying energy rate across the course of the day can also be used. In that case, we used flat, and we look at the amount of energy that is available, put that through an optimization model to come up with an optimized size at a minimum or a maximum price of deployment, and that the economics are then compared to what is feasible for a physical deployment and installed cost of the battery. So we looked at quite a few of those solar plus storage optimization studies. In the case of curtailment, in the case of other restriction that could be reused, other loss of the solar plant, maybe clipping on the DC side. And some are interesting, some are less financially viable. I would say that it really depends on the price of energy, whether the price of energy varies over the day, and whether the available or opportunity, the loss available to recover is consistent throughout the years and day.
Perfect, thank you very much. Now we have a question for Eveline. Could you please provide any specific example on how it would be valuable to translate any of the off-grid solutions to a European country?
Right, that's I think a very broad question. I think to a certain extent, that's already being done, right? There's a few actors that kind of look into these decentralized or autonomous solar systems, and they also kind of look into they have this Internet of Things trading, energy trading between the different systems and like these online platforms. So in that sense, I think it's already happening. The main difference is, of course, that I guess the energy ask in European countries is just much, much larger. So these really small systems would not necessarily cover it. But there's you can kind of like see a trajectory where bigger systems, more energy efficient appliances, and I think that's a key there as well. Would bring the two markets closer together in that sense. I think that's mainly it. We still have a grid lying in the ground, so I think if you have it, you shouldn't not use it. Whereas in Africa, it's a very different story, of course. And I actually, now that I have the microphone, I would actually like to share one thing, which is kind of like a shameless promotion. But GOGLA is having a really large forum. We hold it every 2 years, specifically on off-grid solar energy standalone solutions. The Global Off-Grid Solar Forum, we are holding it in Nairobi on the 18th to the 20th of February. And it's really, if there's any interest in the sector, I think that's really kind of like the place to be. So if you're interested, please feel free to reach out to me as well for more information.
Thank you very much. Now we have a question for Jens. So actually, what are the barriers to enable solar deployments as the major source of power production in emerging markets? So actually, which are the barriers that you have faced in your industry when deploying these digital and solar solutions?
Okay, I think there might be a variety of barriers. The most prominent probably is first the experience of local off-takers with PV. So I mean, all of us, the panelists, but also the audience, we are kind of experts in the solar business. So for us, it's a no-brainer. But still, for the majority of people, solar is something new, which they do not really can assess. Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? And this brings me to the second barrier that is about the financing. So especially in the C&I sector, we experience a lot that companies don't want to have a solar plant on their own balance sheet. So if they have equity available, they rather invest into their core business, new machinery, new facilities, whatever, but nothing like a solar plant. So if for example, you encounter them and approach them with an PPA solution as an IPP in terms of, hey, I just need access to your roof, I would install everything, offer you 10, 15 years PPA based on, I don't know how many cents per kilowatt hour, you may be easier into the game. But the financing aspect from an off-taker risk perspective, from a country risk perspective, not so much from a technical risk perspective, this is quite under control, but the other two mentioned, this is basically decreasing the appetite of some of the investors really to go for it on a broader scale. And last but not least, the major applications we see, not speaking about 50 or 100 megawatts, they all get financing facilities from investors and larger banks. But for the off-takers in the C&I space, where we talk about 500 kilowatt, 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt, it's an overall project budget of between 500,000 to up to 2-3 million. So that is somewhat like a gap, which is it's too expensive for, let's say, smaller investors or equity-based companies, but it is too small for really institutional investors, as the legal overhead cost and all the due diligence costs and so on, they are too high in order to justify such an investment. So I think, yeah, it's a mix of the criteria I was mentioning.
Thank you very much, Jens. And now we have the last question, because we are running a little bit over time. And the last one will be for Douglas Miller. So Douglas, what can be the use case of blockchain in mobility?
Just a general use case. So the way we think about electric vehicles, we think right now, as it stands, EVs are being underutilized as a new grid asset. So first and foremost, as I mentioned during the talk, my presentation earlier, we see electric vehicles as a currently untapped new source of demand for renewable energy. So in the near term, we are focused on opportunities to position every electric vehicle to be a renewable energy buyer, no matter how small or big it might be. So that's something we are very excited about and think should be a priority for folks on the line as we think about not missing this opportunity. We also are thinking about and working on solutions to position electric vehicles to serve as a battery, recognizing there are still some potential limitations around how much given where battery technology is, how much a EV could participate in this, but making it easier for anybody who wants to participate for their EV to serve as a battery for the grid and be paid in micropayments, where the pieces where blockchain comes in is a couple of quick things: creating a digital identity for the electric vehicle, for the electric vehicle owner, and then reporting out critical information about when a given transaction happens in terms of purchasing certificates based on that match the consumption of those vehicles. The other piece we're looking to solve is making it easier for EV owners when they go across different charge point areas, so that they can pay at any given charge point, public charge point, without needing to create new accounts. The nice thing about this is it uses the reason for why we're looking at digital identity, blockchain and so on is creating a consistent technology standard for you have one digital identity for your vehicle that enables you to participate in buying renewable energy and serving it as a battery for the grid, and making it easier for you to make payments across different charge point operator companies. And so those are some of the problems we're looking at solving, where we're actually working on some of these right now at Energy Web Foundation with our members and our network.
Thank you very much, Douglas. So actually, we have arrived to the end of this great webinar, and just say some words about our next event, our next Solar Power Europe event. That will be the Solar Power Summit, the 25th of March, here in Brussels. And I would like to thank you all very much for the speakers and also for the participants that attended today this webinar. And we would like to say that you will receive an email later on with the recordings, with the presentations, and also we will share with you the report that was produced with Solar Power Europe and these fantastic companies that is on the digitalization and solar in emerging markets. So you can get this presentation, the recordings, and the report later on shortly. Thank you very much, everyone, again, and hope you have a nice day. Thanks.